Humans are wired to recognize faces. It's one of the first abilities our brains develop, and one of the last to fade. But there's a glitch in that system, a sharp drop in comfort when we see something that looks human, but moves or emotes in such a way it sits just outside the boundaries of what we would consider normal. This dip is known as the uncanny valley. And one evolutionary hypothesis argues it exists because at some point in our history, our ancestors were hunted by a mimic of sorts, a predator that learned to imitate human posture, human gait, even human curiosity, but never perfectly. According to the theory, our brains evolved a reflexive revulsion toward these almost human shapes, a biological alarm meant to save us. And in the remote corners of Maine, out in the state's quiet margins, where human presence feels like a temporary mistake, people still report seeing figures that trigger that same ancient instinct. Tall, humanoid shapes with elongated features and eyes that glow like lanterns in the dark. Folks call them pale crawlers. Not sure who coined the name, but it fits well enough. Tonight, we examine 3 encounters with what some claim are pale crawlers. Creatures that may be the lingering echo of an ancient predator, or perhaps something far closer to us than we'd like to believe. August 2016, Central Maine. 15 acres of woods pressed in tight around a small cannabis grow. The kind of land where night doesn't just fall. It covers the land like a blanket, thick and absolute. 7 people lived out there that summer, sharing a double-wide trailer as a communal hub. The witness slept in a dead school bus they'd turned into a makeshift home and parked a short way down the driveway. Inside the trailer, the others were still awake, laughing over board games and movies. But after a long day of work, the witness felt the kind of exhaustion that makes your bones feel heavy. They said goodnight, stepped outside, and let the door close behind them. It was a dark night. They walked barefoot, trusting the familiar path, letting the cool ground guide them. The air was still. The woods were silent. Within moments, they reached the edge of the weed field. Four deliberate steps. Not rustling, not scurrying, stepping. The driveway was cleared, no leaves and no debris. So the sound wasn't underfoot. It was coming from the tree line. Something was moving out of the woods and into the open. For a split second, they thought animal. But the rhythm was wrong. Too even. Too measured. Too human. But something about it was off. A knot tightened in their stomach. Their eyes had been on the ground, adjusting to the dark. When the sound came again, they snapped upward. Something was standing 6 feet in front of them. At first, they saw only a chest, pale, bare, and impossibly tall. They had to lift their gaze higher to find the face. The figure towered over them, around 7 feet tall. Its proportions stretched thin like a human shape pulled taut. Its skin was whitish, the exact tone of flesh under moonlight. Except there was no moon. No light at all, in fact. Yet the creature's body seemed to hold its own faint, colorless presence in the dark. It was naked as a jaybird, slender arms hanging at its sides, a head with no ears so far as they could remember, and a face. A face they tried to understand, tried to find the eyes in. But the moment they looked at it, something inside them collapsed. It felt like the creature punched the breath out of their lungs without moving. Their chest seized, their throat locked. They couldn't inhale, couldn't scream, couldn't move. They stood frozen, locked in its gaze, the world narrowing to a pale shape in front of them, and the crushing silence around it. Time stretched thin. The dark felt oppressive. Their body felt like it was shutting down. And then finally, instinct broke through. They ran. Barefoot, blind, sprinting across the driveway toward the trailer. Branches scraped their legs, stones bit into their feet. They didn't stop until they were inside, slamming the door behind them, gasping for air like a fish pulled from water. Their friends tried to explain it away. Maybe a person. Maybe someone near the garden. Maybe a trick of the dark. But the witness knew what they saw. They say it was the strangest experience of their life. They say it changed how they feel about the dark. And they say that whatever stepped out of the woods that night was not human, but close enough to make their instincts scream. Odd as it sounds, pale crawlers showing up around cannabis farms is a pattern I've heard more than once. I'll leave a link to a friend's experience in the notes below. The next story comes from a different corner of Maine, yet it carries the same cold, uncanny signature, with a strange twist that has stayed with me ever since I first heard it. Northern Maine, just outside Baxter State Park. Mount Chase rises out of the tree line like something the woods had been keeping to itself, its trails winding through old forest and cold stone. The witness had hiked there before, knew the waterfalls on the eastern drainage, the caves tucked behind the spray, the way the mountains seemed to hold pockets of shadow even in daylight. On this trip, they were coming down from the backside trail, the slower one. The sun was low, the woods were settling, and the parking area, shared by both trailheads, was just ahead through the trees. That's when they saw movement. A shape slipped out of the woods, low to the ground, moving fast. At first, it looked animal, but the proportions were all wrong. Too long, too tall, too deliberate in the way that it moved. It skittered on 4 limbs, but each limb bent like a human's, not a deer's or a bear. The witness froze, then dropped behind a cluster of bushes, watching through the branches. The creature was roughly 6.5 feet tall, though it was hard to tell while the thing was moving on all 4s. Its gait was unsettling. Not really a crawl, and not a run, but something in between, like it was using a motion it wasn't built for. It didn't seem to notice the witness. It was focused on the parking lot, on the cars. It moved quickly toward one of them, an old Chrysler K car sitting alone on the edge of the gravel. The witness watched, breath held, as the creature approached the driver's side door. And then it stood up. Not smoothly, not naturally, more like unfolding, joints straightening in a sequence that felt somehow out of order, as if it had learned how to stand by watching humans but hadn't mastered the rhythm yet. Once upright, it loomed tall and thin, its silhouette wrong against the fading light of day. The witness didn't move. The creature reached for the door handle. There was a click. The door unlocked. The witness felt a wave of cold confusion. Not fear. Not yet. But the kind of disorientation that comes when the world does something it shouldn't. The creature opened the door, slid into the driver's seat, and closed it behind itself. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the engine turned over. The old Chrysler backed out, turned, and drove away down the dirt road, taillights blinking through the trees until they vanished completely. The witness stayed crouched behind the bushes, staring at the empty space where the car had been. Shock and disbelief paralyzed them. They don't know what they saw, only that it moved like an animal, stood like a person, and left like something that understood both, but belonged to neither. Encounters like that blur the line between instinct and impossibility. But they're not the only ones. Maine has a way of producing sightings that feel both unreal and unmistakably genuine. And the next story comes from someone who wasn't hiking, wasn't alone, and wasn't expecting anything strange until the night decided to show its teeth. Maine carries a different kind of quiet, not just the wilderness silence of mountains, but the rural hush of old family land. The witness was staying at their grandmother's house, a place tucked far enough from town that the woods pressed right up against the yard. Chickens wandered the property during the day, though a fox had been picking them off lately, leaving everyone a little on edge. One night, the dog started barking. Not the casual bark it used when a car pulled in or a raccoon rustled the trash. This was frantic and aimed directly at the tree line. The witness stepped outside, expecting to see a fox again. The air was cool. The yard lights cast a small circle of safety around the porch. But beyond that, the woods were a wall of pitch. The dog wouldn't stop. It stood rigid, hackles raised, staring into the darkness. Then the witness heard it. A noise from the woods. Not the quick scuttle of a small animal. Not the cautious tread of a deer. Something else. Something that didn't fit in any familiar pattern. A sound that felt like movement, but didn't reveal its shape. They peered into the trees. Two eyes looked back. Not glowing like an animal's. Not round. Sharply oval-shaped and blue. Set too high or too far apart or in an angle that didn't make sense. The witness couldn't place what they were seeing. Only that the eyes were wrong. Wrong in a way that made their stomach tighten and their skin prickle. The dog growled low, a sound it rarely made. The witness stood frozen, staring at those blue eyes in the dark, feeling the quiet of the woods pressing in around them. The night seemed to hold its breath. Then, from somewhere out in the distance, not close, but not too far, a voice shouted, "Hey, you idiot! The witness couldn't tell where it came from. Couldn't tell who even yelled it. Couldn't tell if it was directed at them or at the thing in the woods or at someone unseen deeper in the trees. The timing was too perfect. The shout slicing through the moment like a bolt across a blackened sky. The eyes didn't move. The witness did. They sprinted back inside, slammed the door, locked it, and didn't look out the window again that night. Only later, searching online, did they find other accounts. Stories of creatures in Maine's woods with strange proportions, strange behaviors, and eyes that didn't match any animal we knew. I've heard more stories than I can count. Stories of pale figures slipping between trees. Stories of voices that sound human until you listen too closely. Some say these things can mimic anything they need to. A dog's cry, a phone's ringing, even a familiar voice drifting out of the dark. So if you ever hear your name echo from the woods, be sure it's coming from someone you trust. Maybe they're a branch of humanity that never died out. Maybe they're visitors from somewhere far beyond our understanding. Or maybe there's something older than both. Something that learned to survive by wearing our shape. Whatever they are, each new account adds another piece of the puzzle. If you've seen one, reach out to me in the fog. I'm listening. And you've been listening to an Acadia After Dark production, written and spoken by Reverend Redbeard. The winds behind this tale were stirred by epidemic sound, and the heartbeat beneath it, our title theme, was forged by Maine's own folk punk legends, Pine Tree Riot. If we have found a place in your pack, leave a like or a rating before you go. Helps others find us out here in the fog. And if you feel called to walk deeper into these woods, you can join us on Patreon as a lantern holder, gaining early access to ad-free episodes, our lantern logbook, and digital relics crafted for wanderers of the shadows between the pines. If monthly offerings aren't your way, our merch store waits with a dreadfully charming spread of garments to cloak yourself in. Visit AcadiaAfterDark.com for more horror from the coast of Maine. The path ahead grows dim, and I've lingered long enough. You'd best get home yourself. Keep those lanterns lit. Stay safe out there, hikers.